Wonderful. All right, let's jump to item number 3 here. This is discussing the plans to address flooding. This goes back to a significant rain event. I think this is a little more educational, so again, in the interest of time, what would be very helpful, quick snapshot at sort of what happened. Most importantly, focus us on what improvement opportunities are there, what things could we be doing going forward.
Sure. Well, good afternoon again. So today we'll just run you through sort of what we saw for the day. As when a flood event happens, obviously it takes a little time to put the pieces of information together. And so we worked in an interdisciplinary approach as staff. And Nelson's going to walk you through the memo that he provided, and then we want to share with you the after action that we did as staff.
Yes, Commissioners, Mr. Chair. All rain events are unique, but they're typically characterized into storm frequencies. Rain events have a total rainfall associated with them, and if a 5-year storm has a total rainfall that aligns with a 5-year return period, it's called just that, a 5-year storm. It's important to note that the jargon may be a little bit misleading. A 10-year storm is not a storm that only occurs once every 10 years, but rather it's a storm that has a 10% chance of occurring in any given year. It's actually similar to flipping a coin. If you flip one in there and you get heads, you have a 50% chance of getting heads. If that heads were a rain event, it would be a 2-year storm. So 5-year storms have a 20% chance, 10-year storms have a 10% chance, 25-year storms have a 4% chance of occurring in any given year. The reason I'm saying this is because essentially storms can occur more frequently than their return period suggests, and that was one of the items that the Commission asked us to address. So what we do know is that climate change appears to amplify the effects of extreme weather. We don't have a clear consensus from the scientific community what the extent of that increase is, but we can say that these extreme events will occur more frequently than their return period suggests over time. Another component of storms is the intensity. 8 inches of rainfall spread evenly over 10 hours is not the same as 2 inches over an hour. 2 inches over an hour is worse. Specifically addressing the event in question, we had a peak intensity of 1.73 inches of rainfall in a half-hour period. That's similar to a 25-year storm event. Our stormwater system functioned as expected. The peak intensity of the event did exceed its instantaneous capacity during that short half-hour period, after which we saw the system capacity quickly catch up and the stormwater receded. Once the stormwater receded, the system continued to function and there wasn't localized ponding. Our stormwater management systems are designed in a manner to mitigate risk, not to eliminate it completely. So I do want to add that we designed for an acceptable level of service. It wouldn't be practical or really feasible to design for the most extreme event. And even if we did so, there would always be a more extreme event.
Mm-hmm. Great. So what we'll do now is just walk you through the after action if we have the time, just a couple of minutes. So what we wanted to share with you is we know that data's out there, information is out there, but it's kind of everywhere. So we took the effort to really work with the public works staff closely, specifically with Rudy from the operations team and Esmato, who works with me, a resilience analyst, to really collect the data and to walk through this to figure out how we can improve. So Nelson's going to walk you through actually what happened for the day, and then I'll walk you through the recommendations.
Yeah, so on May 16 at approximately 10:30 a.m., we had a rain event. It lasted to about 1:30 p.m. We saw the system function as expected. It did get overwhelmed during its peak intensity, and flooding occurred primarily in areas that hadn't undergone stormwater improvements. The City Hall station recorded 1.73 inches of rainfall in just 30 minutes. At Sunset Harbor alone, 730,000 gallons of water were pumped. That's more than an Olympic-sized swimming pool in just those 30 minutes. And we did have some streets and businesses affected. Quickly walking you through this timeline, the peak intensity occurred at approximately 12:30 p.m. and shortly afterward we started seeing localized ponding in some unimproved areas and in some of the harmonized areas of low-lying harmonized areas of Sunset Harbor. Shortly afterward, once the system caught up, we saw the stormwater recede. As far as flooding concerns that were documented, we documented 27 unique concerns across the city. You can see that a lot of them align with unimproved areas. Flamingo being one of them. Areas that are still undergoing stormwater improvements, such as Palm and Hibiscus and Sunset Harbor. The areas that experience flooding, a lot of them you'll see there are businesses located in Sunset Harbor. I do want to point out that one of the ones that experienced flooding was West Avenue neighborhood, and that would be addressed throughout the West Avenue corridor project. I'm going to walk you through some of the photos, just giving you a feel for what occurred that day. This photo was taken prior to the peak intensity when the rainfall was just starting. You see that it's dry, there is no flooding. It is raining, so the surface is wet, but there is no flooding. Shortly afterward, around 12 o'clock p.m., we started seeing that intensity pick up, and we do see West Avenue and Espanola Way flooded. Again, unimproved areas. The harmonized areas of Sunset Harbor, we do see the stormwater standing there during the peak intensity. What I do want to show you is we saw private properties, particularly the public storage garage, that had water ponding after the stormwater receded in other areas, and you'll see that in the next slide. That may be due to a grading issue, a stormwater infrastructure issue on private property that needs to be handled, and we're happy to facilitate and coordinate with them on that, but there are private property issues that need to be handled by those private properties. You see the harmonized areas such as Sushi Garage and Stiltsville, the water receded after the peak intensity subsided. And again, the same thing in this photo. This is a photograph just showing you our operations personnel out there in the field deployed and working to mitigate the flooding issues. We got 31 flooding complaints. We were able to record 27 unique concerns from those complaints. Public Works deployed not only operations staff but the engineering team to document what was going on out in the field, and temporary pumps were deployed in Indian Creek and Hibiscus Island. The impact from the rain event, we saw traffic congestion. It's curious that we saw traffic congestion in Indian Creek and in West Avenue, both corridors that are being improved right now. So in the future, it's expected that traffic congestion will be alleviated during extreme rain events when the projects are completed. And we saw businesses have to close their door during the peak intensities, particularly in Sunset Harbor.
Quick question for you about the map where you said that you had reporting of flooding issues. Is that only if the report was through eGov?
Yeah, those actually came in through the Public Works Control Room, which would have come from eGov or from CityWorks, the number that people can call into, and then it goes into a kind of a work order system. So one of the recommendations you'll see is ways for us as a city to better collect and document information. Mm-hmm. So if you as a commissioner send an email maybe to me saying this is happening, I now know that I need to send that to the control room so that we can better document that. And that actually came out of this review. It was an excellent question.
Yeah. Okay. Because I'm looking at Roy because there's a few problem areas that we know about in the city where we always get an email from a resident or in one area or another, and I was just I didn't see blue dots where I know those residents are, so I figured this was just coming out of a particular system. But that's a great endeavor, is to help people understand what the right channel of communication is, so that you, as the head engineer, you have your finger on the pulse of what's really happening on a citywide basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did want to mention that this was an all-hands-on-deck effort. So when we conducted the after action, we actually had the city manager, we had the ACMs, we had, of course, Public Works, emergency management, building, and planning, because all of us have a part in examining these events and what happened. And actually, you'll note the item on commercial height standards actually came out of this discussion that day. We said this is time to do something and to revisit that. So something else we did at the after action, I won't go through these, but really take a look at what's happening in the news stories. What are they reporting about Miami Beach? Who are they interviewing? What are they saying? Because that's extra information for us. Interestingly enough, for this, we saw some of the flooding reports were focusing on, for example, standing water at the golf course or standing water in a construction site that has berms to prevent the water coming off. So some of the heavier look at flooding really wasn't in areas that were designed to kind of hold water at the time. So, but we did look at them, and we will continue to do so, because that's a way that we can get information out as well. Some of the things of additional data needs we know we need. We had some photos that you saw, but we'd like better understanding if there's any public infrastructure damage out there. We'd love to know the extent and depth of flooding on roadways. Unfortunately, we don't have sensors everywhere. We don't really know. So understanding from a broad array of city staff and better reporting will really help us determine that. Our road closures are incredibly important for our transportation and mobility department, and our police department, just overall safety. In terms of how long businesses closed for, something learned with analyzing the effectiveness of our system is we have to understand the damages. So we'd love to begin to understand how long were businesses closed for, what was the disruption, and we don't right now have a way to do that. And then finally, just better data on response from staff. What kind of resources was used, what kind of efforts are we putting forward, again, just to look at it a little bit more analytically. We'll talk a little bit about what went well and then some of the opportunities for improvement. Nelson did cover the system function as expected. The public works staff is out there. They are responding to these incidents, making sure that the pumps are working and trying to solve items quickly. Our communications team has very strong flood awareness messages, so they are preparing information and sending it out, cautioning people to be safe. And again, in areas that had new stormwater infrastructure, the water did drain very quickly. Some of the opportunities, number one, our manager asked for a really nice map, a GIS map, so people could more easily see where work has been done and where the draining should be happening more quickly versus unimproved areas, so that people can maybe better understand where they should more protect their car, their public property, be a little bit more careful. So the recommendation there is to create a GIS map of planned, completed, and in-progress stormwater projects. The next item I mentioned already, addressing that those commercial private properties, and overall the takeaway is, some behavior change is needed. We have to know that in light of climate change and severe weather, we do have to make sure that we can really just maybe stay put and wait for that water to drain. The next takeaway here is kind of our to-do list. So these are 6 main things that we have to focus on staff, starting with people. First, really utilizing the employees that are already out in the community, perhaps code, police, others that are out there, to take photos and share information to the Public Works Control Room so that we can better advise the community, not only of flood conditions, but what's the all clear, when is it safe to go back out. The next one is our systems. We have a challenge of information being collected in many different ways, CityWorks, eGov, social media, emails, so we need a coordinated approach to that. Third is to develop a plan for tracking and monitoring any after-action recommendations. Let's make sure this happens as staff and that we're really looking at how effective we're being. The fourth is to look at current processes. So right now we have a flood response preparedness and communication standard operating procedure, which was developed for our community rating system program, actually got us a lot of points and helped us with our overall rating. So we're going to use that to better define roles and responsibilities within a current approved process to help with that. And then fifth, we really liked this after action, and we're already talking about how to establish a routine that this becomes easier, understand what went well, it's not so hard to collect all this, and really even I recently visited the control room and talked to staff there, and they'd be happy to be a part of that. And this will become easier as we begin to do this. And then finally is to train staff on using the central control room, using it as a central point, and to use that to feed into our overall communications. We have a couple of different systems, and I won't go into this, but we have Crisis Track, which is used for more disaster reporting, and then we also have CityWorks. So we're aware we have to coordinate. We may have some duplication, and these are things we have to work through as staff. Here are our sources. And thank you very much. We welcome any comments.
No, thank you very much. That's right on. That was the type of review that I sort of was hoping we could get to, and that was exactly on point, so it's very helpful. I like the improvement opportunities. Just one thing I would highlight as a priority as we move to the next item, number 10, that is specifically, but is really anything we can do in the built environment for private property owners, those flooding pictures, and whether it's awareness or tools or what else should those property owners be doing so the next time it rains like that, because it's coming, we won't see those pictures as much. That would be my last thought. I'd leave